Hello and welcome, Rangers. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
And I'm not sure how many people are actually going to show up for this, but let's hope a few do. I figure that we might as well kind of do Tommy next as, well, seems like a very natural decision to jump from, progressively going from the characters who had less focus towards the characters with the most focus in terms of the Rangers. Bulk and Skull and Rita and Zed and Zordon will all be slipped in there before probably Kimberly. Because why not? But that said, there's a lot of episodes that Kimberly and Tommy share in common. So this is also going to probably feel a bit like a Kimberly live stream, but also a recap of Jason. Because Tommy is really just an extension of these two characters at this point in the story. And this is also a good Valentine's Day or Valentine's month stream because Tommy's entire arc is basically being arm candy for Kim. So it works out. Tommy first appears in Green with Evil, Part 1, Part 1. He's the first real martial artist to match Jason. And for fans, this is no mean feat. This is a worthwhile accomplishment. Now, long-term wise, Tommy would overtake Jason as a major character and as a martial artist. So that in the Turbo movie, he'd easily defeat Jason with very little difficulty, while possessed Jason struggled to keep up with Tommy. And that's Tommy with some of the weakest powers he'll ever have, the Turbo powers, which are really... I actually like the look of the Turbo Ranger red ability, but it's garbage in comparison to Zeo and White Ranger powers, and even Dino Thunder. But Tommy is very unique in that he would don more costumes than anyone else, and he'd take on more roles in the Power Ranger mythology than any other character. And this is because Jason David Frank, bless his soul, loved this mythos and carried the franchise on his very broad, very impressive, muscular shoulders. And I think that with GDF, everybody loved him. That was a Power Ranger fan in their own way. And we all loved him. And there was a lot to love because he just seemed likable, if lonely. And the thing about GDF is he was able to convey a lot of himself in a way into Tommy. And now I do think that he was a good actor and that he was able to successfully separate himself from the character in a way so that Tommy came across as different. And GDF in a lot of interviews and live streams explained his acting process with Tommy, and it was really he had a good process to working it. For example, Tommy would speak in a slightly higher tone than Jason David Frank, at least early on in the career in the history of the Power Rangers. That said, Tommy has, when he first is introduced, a loneliness to him. There's a lost boy element. He's a very lonely character. He's not quite as depressed as, say, Rocky Balboa from the Rocky movie, the first one, because we did a review of that on another one of our channels, and there's a reason why we said it's the best movie for its depiction of depression, because although a very talented boxer, Rocky Balboa is so utterly depressed and doesn't believe in himself at all. Like, as in with the one scene, my favorite scene, like, all I want to do is measure up. Well, wow, that's depression talking. Tommy is like that. in a way. He's very lonely, but not depressed the same way as Rocky, but just lonely. And in a way, he's very similar to Kim in that regard. So, it's a little star-crossed between the two because they're very similar people. And she's obviously fairly lonely. He's obviously fairly lonely. So, yeah, get hitched. But it's the loneliness of Tommy that makes him an easy target for Rita. And let's make no mistake, Tommy kind of made it easy. And there's a bit of a metaphor in Tommy's story for the kind of kids who fall into drugs or gangs and whatnot, I think. And everybody saw it immediately. So Tommy presents a very realistic redemption arc. And in universe, though, in regards to the possession, this early abuse and violation, that's probably a better term, this violation by Rita of Tommy is one that would indelibly leave a profound mark upon Tommy Oliver. Tommy would never quite come to, well, he eventually did come to terms, but for a long time he didn't, he struggled really with this violation by Rita and with all that he had been made to do, how he nearly destroyed the Power Rangers, how he came very close to permanently exiling Zordon, so that you really sympathize with Tommy, I think, after Green of Evil. Yet it's a great joy that Dino Thunder managed to close up this gaping wound in Tommy's soul when Tommy helps save the one kid. I forget his name. I'm sure someone will.
Trent,
that's it. I love his character, but I always forget his name. Trent was ultimately, in a way, someone who helped save Tommy to an extent, or at least helped close this chapter on Tommy's life. So Green with Evil is a plot that has far-reaching consequences on the story. But most of all, it introduces Tommy Oliver, the great martial arts genius who goes toe-to-toe with Jason, and they have a draw, and who immediately seems to fall for Kim and defends her from Bulk and Skull at school when they're harassing her. And we immediately start to see the two bond together. He's also a little just simply mean as a Green Ranger when he just simply tells Kim, the world doesn't revolve around you. And I like how she rebuttals, well, excuse me for existing or something. And it's like, wow, that's petty. But I wonder how much of that was Tommy himself or maybe Rita speaking through Tommy in a way. How much autonomy did he have?
That is an interesting question.
And I wonder if she injected him with a bit of her own spirit when she possessed him.
Because when someone possesses you like that, you're not completely yourself.
Yeah.
Can a person be taking some of your insecurities and lashing them out?
Sure. But Tommy doesn't seem to resent Kim or anything in any way.
And maybe if Tommy is upset with the world, she was a convenient target under the mind control.
Yeah, but I'm gonna say that he doesn't seem to have been upset with Kim. She seemed to have been the only person he wasn't upset with, to an extent.
So that might have been a bit more Rita being the catty cat.
Yeah, because we got to bear in mind, Rita always had a grudge against Kim.
It's the entire Snow White thing. The wicked witch jealous of Snow White.
Yeah, it's definitely that. And Tommy, in using the boy she likes, like that does go back to Snow White, where the prince, at least in the Disney version, was used to an extent against Snow White, or at least, it's Sleeping Beauty where he's imprisoned and for a time. Yeah, and Sleeping Beauty is done like that. So it does harken back to fairy stories. But yeah, like, but with Tommy, he was unusually manipulative, spiteful, and whatnot. And what's interesting is that Tommy does not have these traits in. Sorry, I just have an eyelash in my eye. But he doesn't have these traits when he's himself.
This is something more Goldar Rita.
I think, yeah. But I think that when it comes to Tommy, he's a much more patient individual. Like, later we see him when he's himself, and he's got a lot of patience. He puts up with a lot. And he's not the sort to lose his temper. Now, I'm going to compare and contrast him with Jason. Jason does have a temper. It's a very important defining trait of Jason's. Jason also has his pride, which Goldar keeps needling and hitting and attacking in order to draw Jason out into doing impulsive, sometimes foolish things. Tommy, on the other hand, is patient, level-headed, and tends to prefer thinking before he leaps. And so, weirdly, the two are complete polar opposites. In a lot of ways, I might argue Tommy has more in common to an extent with Trini than with Jason. He's almost a male version of Trini, I think I've said in another video or stream. And I still think that holds true to an extent. The same in early on, the initial shyness of maybe of Billy, but combined with Trini's intelligence, resourcefulness, innate goodness, and yeah, I think that there's a lot more in common between those two characters. But after Green with Evil, where Jason defeats him, which is a pretty good fight, Jason does. Now, at this point, I'd argue early on, Jason surpasses Tommy. And, like with the Green with Evil story. But then over the course of the first season, we start to see Tommy surpass Jason, especially with the one fight with Goldar that Tommy later has. And the next real storyline with Tommy is one where, the next time Tommy really morphs is this, I think, the Trouble of Shell Shock, which is more a Jason episode. And of course, you have Gung Ho, where Tommy and Jason team up.
In a high school American Gladiators style show.
Ninja competition at the youth center, yeah. Just looking for our notes. And yeah, these next two episodes are more about Jason to an extent. And there is, however, one important episode that we see of Tommy and that you didn't include when you made our notes. Calamity Kimberly.
Okay.
Because I had asked if you could get us the Kimberly notes as well. You didn't include the shared episodes with Kim. All right. Just put the episodes real quickly because I want the episodes with Kim and Tommy because there's a lot more of those. And just give it a moment to load. Oh, they moved it to the side. All right. So after Green with Evil, well, of course, we see Tommy's mischievous side in Itsy Bitsy Spiders because Zach's got a phobia of spiders, and Tommy plays a prank on him at the end of the episode, which is pretty funny. And it's actually very funny. And so the most noteworthy episode after Green with Evil, I would argue, for Tommy is Calamity Kimberly. And the only reason I argue that is that in that episode, Tommy, we see his more gentlemanly side. And Kim feels horrible because she's had a rainy day. Well, it started raining the minute she stepped out. Her umbrella broke, and she's tumbled out of the bed with a bad hair day. And of course, Tommy comes walking towards her, and I just love that scene because she's like, "Oh no, not him!" It's just so funny. On the other hand, Tommy handles it like a champ, and if you pay attention in the scene, I like how he ends up going a little wet, and complains, "It looks like something I drew when I was 5," regarding her school notes. And Tommy, if you notice, is doing this or something. Like he's wiping his hand off because it's so wet. But Bulk and Skull once again harass Kim, and once again Tommy comes to the rescue. And Tommy also ends up offering to walk Kim home, and we see the two bond a little. So that this episode is a very important Tommy episode because, well, it's one of the only ones. Well, sort of. The thing is, it's much more of a Kim episode, but Tommy has the role of love interest. So in that regard, he's cast in the role of love interest, of course. But if we recall, it was Kim that Tommy kind of looked to for encouragement to take up Jason's handshake. And it's here that Tommy kind of returns to handshake by looking out for Kim. And he ends up indeed trying to, and does help rush to the rescue alongside the other Rangers. And if memory serves, and Kim is rescued and enraged at having been stuck in a bottle. Well, at least that deals with a drinking problem. And you have A Star Is Born,
which is noted in our notes.
Yeah. And this episode, though, I would argue has far less reason to be there. Like Tommy, I should probably, once again, me and the camera, I'm never very good at adjusting it. There. But let's see, is competing with Bulk for a role in a karate commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And here we discover he has, like a lot of people who are have a hole in their life, they want to fill it with the entertainment industry because, there's no business like show business. But this is a plot point that's used a few times in this season. And I think a little in season 2. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
And yet it does show the loneliness of Tommy, and it does show his that he's got a hole there. Mm-hmm. And I would argue this is setting up the seeds for another plot, which is in Zio with his family and his brother and his grandfather, which, looking back on it, if you tie that plot point in Zio up with this one, it actually adds to Tommy's character a lot.
Yeah.
And it's, I think he does get the commercial, though, but he doesn't seem to meet with any real success.
Yeah.
And of course we have the green candle, but like, and real quick, just to get back to Star Is Born, it's interesting that even after he's returned to good, although, he doesn't seem to have dealt with his sense of loneliness and loss in a way. It seems like Tommy's not only back to what he was before the possession, but he also has the trauma of the possession added on top of that. So that A Star Is Born, if looked at in the large continuity of Power Rangers, kind of shows the some of the problems Tommy is dealing with emotionally and how he's trying to deal with it. Maybe not in the best way, but he's trying.
I can't help but think of, when Jason wanted to stand up to Bulk by beating Bulk's one record.
Yeah.
This is a bit of the same thing with Rocky wanting to stand up to Bulk.
Rocky?
Tommy.
Oh, Tommy. Yeah, to an extent, but I'm going to argue that in the case of Jason is someone who I think it was in a way standing up. It was, like you said, standing up to Bulk, because Bulk would lord over that record and would be very infantile about it. Whereas with Tommy, I think it was more Tommy. It was more about plugging up a hole in Tommy's soul. It like here it was more about Tommy, whereas with Jason it was more about Bulk, in a way. And I don't. I'm going to be honest. I find Tommy the more interesting character. I'm not going to lie, but I don't think Jason had that insecurity that Tommy had, in a way. Because you've got to bear in mind, Tommy's a boy who doesn't know his own past.
He's bereft.
Yeah, so he has to fill up a hole. Jason is trying to stand up to the bully. Tommy's trying to find his place. In a way, if you had to give Tommy a theme song for A Star Is Born, it'd be "I'm Still Here" from Treasure Planet. I'd argue. That's the difference between the two.
Good song.
Yeah, good song. The green candle, where Rita uses her magic candle to grab at the green powers. We explained this in our Jason live stream, but on Tommy's end, he has this episode really ends up worsening things for Tommy, I think, because basically he fails as well. He just started to get a bit of confidence, a little, not much, and he's crushed even more because, let's be honest, he couldn't win that fight without the other Rangers. And this is the Green Ranger powers at their peak in the early days. So he doesn't exactly score an impressive, he doesn't show himself to be a very impressive Ranger here, probably to his mind. And we got to bear in mind, let's look at his track record so far. Possessed and this turned to evil. Soundly defeated almost every time, except when in the company of the other Rangers, like you look at Calamity Kimberly. And now with the Green Candle, defeated and needing rescue and loses his powers and has to forfeit them to Jason. This is humiliating. Like, even for someone who doesn't care about his pride, this is humiliating.
He's the sixth Ranger. He should be able to tip the scales.
But that's the interesting thing. In later days, the sixth Ranger is typically the strongest or something in a lot of cases. But in the first season, the Green Ranger is the weakest. So the sixth Ranger is the weakest, but he's probably the cleverest and most resourceful and the strongest. Like, if you're to level the playing field between him and Jason, he could probably he could actually hold his own pretty well at this point. I'm going to argue that early season one, we have to give it to Jason. But it's called character development. I think Tommy does surpass Jason. But on the other hand, you take Jason, not Jason, you take Tommy, and let's say you level his abilities with most other sixth Rangers, he'll triumph. But the trouble is those abilities are not the powerhouse they later are, powered up by the other abilities that Tommy has at his disposal. So what you have is really a storyline where, yeah, Tommy doesn't really shine fruit. Now, I'm just looking through some of the other episodes. Yeah, there's just a brief moment where he returns just to say, "Hey," at the back of a crowd on a festival day, on a Power Ranger Day thing. That was dumb.
That wasn't really well received.
Yeah, I remember people being angry back in the day. Like, I remember people going, "Tommy's returning," then the studio basically mocked us with Tommy going,
waving.
Yeah, and them just going, like, as they're walking by, and it almost felt like they're like the characters were patronizing Tommy, and it felt like, sorry, you can't have your favorite Ranger character. Like, it was really, I remember people cursing. Like, I was only like, I think 3 or 4 years old at the time. I think I was like 2 or 3 actually. And I remember going to kindergarten or something, and people were, and kids my age, like 3-year-olds, were cursing and F-bombing about it. Like, it was, nobody was happy with this.
And I think there were a lot of angry letters that came in, and
probably from fans,
and they were forced to essentially concede.
Yeah, reluctantly. They didn't want to because, well, they didn't really like catering to the fans. I would argue they still don't. I'm just going to quickly just do one thing I should have done earlier, and that's just post on Twitter, I guess. But and you have Return of an Old Friend, which is the real return of Tommy Oliver. And this episode is, I remember people being pretty excited about it. Billy is hypnotized into stealing the Dragon Dagger from the command center, gives it to Goldar, who turns it into a box. I don't know how a dagger becomes a box, but okay, it becomes a box. So why didn't they just have Goldar summon up a box? Why does he need to turn the Dragon Dagger into a box? Like, what's with that? Or is it a case of where dragons keep treasures and thus it's a metaphor for the dragon, well, them giving their treasure away to a dragon?
Part of me can't help but think when you're looking for the Dragon Dagger, you're looking for a dagger, not a box.
Yeah, but they all saw him turn it into a box, so they would know what they're looking for.
Then he should transform into something else after he leaves.
Yeah, or maybe turn into a submarine and depart for Europe or Asia or something and hide over there till he's summoned back to Rita.
Or
turn it into a giant bird. I don't know. I don't
turn it into a grain of sand and flick it on a beach.
Oh. Okay. I think we're getting a little
carried away.
Yeah. We're getting way carried away. But the fact that Billy is hypnotized is pretty interesting. And because Billy really lacks a lot of resolve at this point. But I think that in terms of Billy's character, this kind of hardens him against Rita and Goldar.
And that's the one thing. Goldar knows that in many ways, Billy's the most dangerous of the Rangers.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't know that yet. He doesn't know that yet. He deliberately smack talks Billy.
True.
In the episode. No, he completely doesn't calculate Billy as a threat.
Okay, I'll retract my statement.
Billy is someone whom Goldar doesn't think much of, and I think he thinks of it in terms of being weak-willed, because Billy is timid and shy and struggles a lot with confidence and self-esteem at this point.
Plus, with Goldar, he's a nerd.
Yeah, I guess. But Billy does get his resolve hardened after this and becomes a much more vicious and dedicated fighter. In turn, though, Jason here reveals his clever side when he goes, they didn't get every power coin, revealing the dragon coin. Tommy only has enough time to go, where is everybody? Because, of course, he's late. This was often a feature of Tommy's character early on, his lateness. He's always late. He's always...
the blitz?
Yeah. But he's also often got early memory issues. Like, he often seems forgetful. But I wonder, like, I wonder if, to an extent, we shouldn't just consider this, whether he's got actual memory problems. I don't think that's the case, because he doesn't seem to have those issues in the second season when he's White Ranger or when he's Dino Thunder. I think he's more... I think that the only reason Tommy seems to be forgetful is because he doesn't believe in himself to an extent. But on the other hand, there's also the fact that I think he's distracted by his own emotional isolation. in that he's really in his own head, not in that he's not paying attention as much as he does later.
And one can lose track of time very easily in such a state.
Yeah, and the thing is, Tommy also ends up he ends up summoned to Zordon, where, thank heavens, Tommy's late. And now Tommy being late even goes into Dino Thunder. Tommy is not punctual. He tries to be, doesn't succeed. He's like Barry Allen from the Flash comics in that regard. But on the other hand, Tommy takes this and turns it to his own advantage, which is no mean feat in life, because being late, a lot of people will judge you for, hey, I'm a punctual person. I don't like people being late. But somehow Tommy makes it work using his boyish charm and his natural politeness. It's just that in terms of aspirational or, I think, relatable heroes, Tommy's more the aspirational one. Yeah, I know a lot of people kind of relate to Tommy, which kudos to them. Good for you for relating to him. I can understand. But he's also aspirational in that, he's like Clark Kent. He's the same kind of character as Clark Kent. Or, well, maybe not. Well, Spider-Man's also, he's a little bit of both. I guess a bit like Tommy in that regard. But Tommy does have a bit more of that Superman side to him eventually, where he's aspirational. He's someone you could aspire to. That said, once in the command center, Tommy is told, yeah, you're back in service. At which point he basically asked him, okay, I'd love to help, but how? At which point it's decided that Zordon will transfer some of his own energy to Tommy in order for Tommy to morph. And this proves a dangerous act. They pull it off. But while in the field, Tommy starts to lose power, and Zordon has to transfer more and more power so that this becomes like a parasite with Zordon. And so you have Zordon, who has to constantly channel energy into Tommy, and Tommy, who has to suck in that energy. But the problem is the green coin devours the energy too quickly. I think that this is a side effect from the green candle. It's not stated outright, but I suspect it is, because Zordon originally powered up all the power coins. And the thing with this process, it seems like Tommy's warring with the candle for control or something, I think. Because, it becomes a black hole of energy.
Yeah, this isn't something Rita and Goldar would consider
as a possible action. But on the other hand, I wonder if maybe they did consider it in terms of if they knew it was a side effect of the green candle. Because the candle it's not burning anymore, but it's, all green energy is going there in that direction. Which I will give you this much about Rita. When she had possessed Tommy, she had the foresight to say he should touch the green candle. In case he ever turns on me, I'll have the means to take the power away from him. Which, not to bash the idea of Lord Draken, but it's impossible for Draken to have actually won in the comic books, in his universe. Because, quite frankly, green candle, that's the secret weapon to just nullify his abilities. But that's the thing, I find that thematically Draken didn't really work. At least that's my opinion. Although somehow Battle for the Grid turned it into a really compelling, good storyline.
Yeah.
And of course, Green Ranger Tommy triumphs over Draken, so that's cool. That said, Tommy does get the box back from Goldar, collapses in the command center, and returns the power coins to the other Rangers. But given just how much it took out of Tommy for him to just do almost so little, it's like, yeah, this is the start of a very bleak arc for Tommy. It doesn't, being a Power Ranger doesn't become fun for him to an extent. And in its own way, it seems like it's very emasculating for the character later because he's the bench warmer. And then when he is deployed, he's a cripple. And, like within 2 seconds, he's basically going, okay, I'm out. I can't do this anymore. That's what happened. And he has to constantly recharge with Zordon. And thus I'm going to be honest, Zordon contributes more than the Green Ranger abilities. So if it becomes a choice between those abilities and Zordon, you'd want to give up the Green Ranger abilities over Zordon. And of course, you have two heads are better than one. Of course, they don't end up singing the song If I Didn't Have You, which they really should have. I'm kidding. Quest for Camelot reference. Now, here we should have notes. Yeah. They're teaching self-defense classes to mothers. Oh, mother. Anyways, Rita sees that they work well as a team and decides, to curse them because, or at least send down her lackey. But Tommy ends up outsmarting the creature because it's that easy. And of course, Tommy ends up defeating the creature by using a specific type of fruit, which this is a really episode. It does show the resourcefulness of Tommy, I guess. I'm just going to check the other notes for any Kimberly episodes. We have to keep our eye on Kimberly because, how do I put it? She's the star of the show, and her and Tommy. Now, there's no real notes back to the Jason notes because they have more details. Wow, was he Kimberly's boyfriend or was he Jason's boyfriend?
Yeah.
He bounced between the two. That's the real love triangle. Jason wanting Tommy, Tommy wanting Kim, Kim wanting Tommy. That's the real triangle. And then Emily shows up and wants Jason. And then Puck comes along and mixes it all up, and Oberon gets mad at him. Oh, wait, that's the plot of Midsummer Night's Dream. Okay. But anyways, Jason and Tommy on Pins and Needles volunteered to teach kids. Now, first they taught mothers self-defense, so young women self-defense, and then kids. So obviously both Jason and Tommy are pretty much going into business together, trying to teach people martial arts and self-defense. And a lot of the reason for this is that they both derive peace and happiness from a lot of martial arts, because for both of them, it's a bit of a way of life.
And I suppose when it comes to Tommy, his reasoning behind doing all of this is that he was that lonely, shy kid. And even if it was just a little bit, martial arts did give him some self-confidence.
Yeah. Which, speaking of which, in the football season episode, Tommy wants to go into football, but lacks confidence to do it. And he ends up pulling it off and becomes a quarterback, but if only for a brief time. I think it's implied he gives this up eventually because being a Ranger takes up a lot of your time. Because I think by the time of mid-season 2, Tommy's not really spending, most of his time seems to be thrown at being a Power Ranger, which, kudos to him, he's saving the day, getting Lady Fair. That's what it's all about. But on the other hand, this need for confidence from martial arts and this need for to go and become a football player also seems to be, it seems like Tommy lacks confidence at this point to an extent in his own physicality. And what I mean by that is that I think this is a after effect of the possession to an extent, yes, but also, now that I think about it, It's the curse of the green ring, not the green ring, the green coin losing power consistently. And so Tommy's always on the bench warmer. So, he's kind of worried about his own physical capabilities. So becoming a quarterback is a means by which he can prove his masculinity in a way. And the thing is, he does seem to, at the same time, innately doubt himself. And that's really the interesting thing about Tommy. Just how much, because to a lot of fans, he's the icon in a way. Like, he's the one everyone looks to, and think, wow, like, he's the most masculine of the Power Rangers. He's the most positive in a way. And yet, he lacks confidence in himself. And that's really his arc throughout season 1, just lacking faith in himself. And that's something that in season 2, when he becomes White Ranger, he doesn't seem to have that problem at all. And you almost have to look at Green and White Ranger Tommy as two very separate characters almost.
One thing that is something to consider is that when someone, particularly a youth, constantly goes from possible hobby or extracurricular, trying to figure out what he wants to do, it does show an aspect of insecurity and trying to find himself. Who is he?
I didn't think of that. Okay. Yeah.
And Tommy is doing a bit of that.
Yeah. The football thing, I think, does last throughout that school year, though. I think Tommy does end up going through that and then decides he wants to try other things, which that also happens. Not entirely due to only insecurity, but I think but let's be honest, in universe, he's probably buffer than a quarterback by the time he's White Ranger. Even as a Green Ranger, he's probably fairly buff for one. And I'm not saying that to knock quarterbacks. No, they're some of the buffest guys around. That's just how buff Tommy is in universe. Well, we have to bear in mind, at one point, GDF I think around the early 2000s had to lose muscle mass in order to fit into the armor rather than them refitting the armor for him, which I really think they should have just forked up the money and refitted the armor, whatever it was, green or white, so that he could don it for that anniversary episode. Because why should he lose muscle mass? He's worked hard for that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But anyways, the next episode, I would argue, that does focus a little on Tommy is, I would argue, an oyster stew. Now, at this point, Zach is wildly infatuated with Angela, and he kind of mucks it up. Well, see our stream on that and our review of that episode, or just watch the episode because it's a pretty good episode. And Zach and Tommy have to team up and fight the Oysterizer. And this is actually a really fun episode. But in this episode, we also see Tommy interact a lot more with Zach. And Zach and Tommy, throughout the series, like you look back on the football season episode, the two have a really strong working relationship and are really, really friendly with each other. And this is a bromance I find that people often forget about. Zach and Tommy had a really great bromance in the early days of the series. And of course, who could forget the mutiny? Now, the mutiny is an interesting episode because looking at our notes, the thing that I noticed the most is that, well, for one thing, they go on quads, and that just looks like fun. But this is the first intro of Zed, but they don't actually see Zed. Like, we, the audience, see Zed, but there's something interesting about the Rangers where Zed is assuming a more ominous role. He's like Sauron, because he's almost more an idea, so that he could be anywhere. He is indomitable. He is a force of nature. And when you actually look at Zed in the early days, he does seem like a force of nature He, like, throughout almost all of season 2, he is just power itself, or at least in an evil context. Well, he has very demonic connotations in his first appearance. So, yeah, turning a snake into his staff, that we all know what the connotation is there. And it's very fascinating how later, I would argue, Zed and Tommy are destined to become arch nemesis to one another. But Zed ends up really being the one who puts the final nail in for the Green Ranger powers, because he ends up he ends up noticing early on, because he's that perceptive and brilliant, that Tommy's powers are fickle. They activate, click off. They're just not reliable. Tommy's a reliable person. The Green Ranger powers are not. So you have now, but in the Mutiny episode, Tommy's paired with the other Rangers. He's firmly one of the team, but within a few episodes, he's going to be not cast out, but like he's how do I put it? You quickly notice how weakened he is in comparison to everyone else. Because, like, you look at, like, Putty on the Brain. Obviously, like, Tommy's, hangs out with the rest, like with Kim especially, and even Billy or Jason. But it's noteworthy how his abilities constantly need recharging, and how this is even starting to be a physical pain for Zordon to have to go through. And, of course, in Bloom of Doom, we have Kimberly. Now, in Bloom of Doom, this isn't, I would argue it's also a bit of a Tommy episode to an extent, in that Tommy, now this is a really funny episode as well, although it's a very dramatic one. Kim is very jealous of Trini. Trini gets very angry over this jealousy. I think it's like almost a straw that broke the camel's back here. Like, Trini's like, okay, I can't keep putting her up with her insecurities. I've had it up to here. Or up to here, considering Trini was probably short. I'm joking. But you have Kim, who won't go and apologize. Tommy tries to tell Kim, that Trini's your friend, so why aren't you making peace? Trini's under that weird spell by Lord Zed, which I always got the feeling was created from Zed's blood. So does his blood have some sort of toxic influence on people, like the 9 rings of Sauron?
That would make a lot of sense, because Zed is evil personified.
Yeah, he's the physical manifestation of the dark side of the morphing grid.
So imbibing his blood would have a corrupting element.
Yeah, and thankfully Zordon knows how to cure it. But I imagine that the cure is not something that you can manufacture. We have Austin McNeil from last time. Hey there, guys. What's up with Ranger fam? Nothing much. And yourself? We hope you're well. Today we're discussing Tommy. At this point, my favorite character. But back to Bloom of Doom. Now, Kim is jealous of Trini, of course, and Trini's, of course, angry because this is like, what, the second or third episode she's had to deal with Kim's jealousy? I think she's a little tired by this time of it. On the other hand, Kim was a little more vicious than usual under Zed's weird blood jealousy poison. And you have Tommy, who ends up trying to tell the two girls, you're friends, you have to make peace. And really putting his nose in there, when in the background, I find it's funny how you have Jason kind of doing the, don't, it's girls. You don't
get between two,
you don't get
scrapping girls.
Yeah, it seemed like Jason was cringing at a few points. And you get the sense that Jason isn't sure this is wise. While Tommy sees it as, no, we have to get involved, because if it was when we fight, Trini and Kim interfere with our fights or something. So we have an obligation here. We have a duty, and, he's going to go pull through. And, of Okay, doing good. Just getting ready for the anniversary special. It's 55 minutes long. Oh, I'm not sure when that's airing. I have not kept track. We'll have to make a special review of it. I've honestly forgotten about the 30th anniversary. I know, shame on me.
I've forgotten about it as well.
I saw the trailer, although I was annoyed because they didn't explain the actual plot of the trailer. And well, I'm excited because it means we get Zach and Rocky on screen together. I'm a big Rocky fanboy, so, and I love Zach, so that's great. And on the other hand, we're also getting to see Billy and Zach together for the first time in like 30 years. So that's exciting. That's the positive. But there is a person missing at this anniversary, I would argue. Tommy, or I should say GDF. But yeah, Bloom of Doom, Tommy really interjects himself into the middle of the girls' fight. And I'm actually going to say there's not many guys who would do that. You know, like, I'll be honest, I really wouldn't probably interject myself into a fight between two ladies. I don't see the point.
Too much drama.
But Tommy says, no, you go in there, you sit down, and you ask them what's going on. And you help them resolve it. And I'm actually going to say in a way that is chivalrous. And so as an archetype, Tommy is not, right now, he's, I would argue at this point in the story, he's the lover in his fullness to an extent, because, you know, that's all he is. He's the love interest of Kim. But he seems determined, like an example of the lover in his fullness archetype, I would argue, is Ted Mosby from How I Met Your Mother, eventually. Not at the start, but he's got to stumble and figure it out. You've got, let me think back to mythology. I like to think Euler, to an extent, is from the Nordic myths, because Euler is Gaity's second husband and seems to go a lot further to being willing to make peace with his wife. Unlike Niord, who sees it as nope. But that's due to differences in attitude. She prefers the mountains and whatnot. He prefers the seas. But so yeah, Tommy really goes a long way to fixing the problem between the two girls. I like Rocky too, but he's better as Zeo Blue because red is and always will be Jason's color. I'm going to disagree. You can prefer Jason. I found that I preferred Rocky as Red Ranger.
But Zeo Blue is still a good color for him.
Yeah, it was. He was great in Zeo. I will acknowledge.
Indeed.
I really liked him in Zeo. So not going to fully disagree. Just I like Rocky no matter. I'll take Rocky however I can get him. I really like Rocky. He's one of my favorite Mighty Morphin Rangers. On the other hand, I do prefer Billy and Tommy. And Aisha, because Aisha's just awesome. Sorry, I'm a big Stone Canyon Trio fanboy. But I actually do get why some people prefer the original three. You know, like,
yeah,
everybody has their favorite Rangers for a reason. Like, I think it's Leo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and I actually get it because Leo gets a great arc. But I'm going to be honest, Leo would not be the same character without Mike and Kai.
I agree with that.
Because those three come as a trio in Lost Galaxy. If you take one of them out, the season's garbage. So you need all three, I would argue. They're the three, OG three of that season, just to make the comparison. Tommy, though, is troubled by a recurring dream about losing his powers in the Green Dream. Wow, what an apt title for an episode. It's The Green Dream, because he's having dreams of green. Okay. Red Roses too. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. Louis Armstrong. He departed from us too soon. But the thing is, in this episode, Tommy doesn't realize that Zed's caught on to his failing powers. And that really Zed has really got it in for him. because Zed is clued in on the fact that Tommy's abilities are weakening, are dying. And so Zed, in the previous episodes, this is where his genius really shows. He seems to be probing, looking for weaknesses. But then when he zeroes in on, Tommy's abilities always fail. I'll get him there. That's the weak point. That's the weakest chain or link in the chain that is the Power Rangers. Tommy is the weak point.
He's probably one of the most intelligent Power Ranger villains around.
I'd probably argue he is the smartest. He's also probably, I think, the oldest for the most part. Not counting, I think Ivan Ooze, but, he is possibly the oldest because he's as old as, I think, Zordon or something, maybe even older. And we got to bear in mind, I just love how it seems like Zed's got a one-track mind of, I'll just keep going after Tommy. But really, Zed's got two main strategies. Now, one of them you noted early on in our reviews when we were rewatching the series. You noted that he always seems to try to turn the Rangers against each other or get something like, not exactly Psycho Rangers, but get extra sort of Rangers and turn Ranger against Ranger, playing them against each other, divide and conquer, as the Romans would put it. And in turn, his other early strategy, before to an extent to that, even that one, is to constantly hit at Tommy because he knows Tommy's powers are weakening, are fading. And it's at the end of the Green Dream episode that Tommy notes to the others, my powers are failing. I think I'm at the end of my power cycle. I think it's this episode where he has that very, very depressing scene at the end. And you have Jason and Kim who are heartbroken and devastated. But then you have the Power Stealer episode.
I think that one reason why Tommy realizes he can't keep morphing using the green coin is because I think Zed caught on to the fact that Zordon is pouring more and more energy into it.
Yeah, I think he did note that detail. And, he decided that's the guy I knocked down. Good question for you guys. What do you think would happen if Tommy never lost his Green Ranger powers? And who would you shipped in Turbo and Space and Lost Galaxies? Shipped pairing?
What would happen?
Well, I think that he would still get the green powers replaced because the green abilities, Tommy's track record before Green Candle is not impressive. And I think that, for one thing, Zordon would have, I think no matter what, he would have wanted to replace him with the white power, the white light of good, because the white light is the strongest power at this point. And I think he would have chosen Tommy because Tommy does end up demonstrating quite a bit of skill, resourcefulness, and leadership qualities. I think that Tommy was a shoo-in for those white abilities. And I think that Tommy played an integral role in Zordon's, I don't want to say master plans, but his overall, to look at it he's basically like an architect looking at building plans and going, I got to build the foundation. I need, to dig the foundations out. And then I need to, prep my concrete and I need to put everything in place. And I think that Tommy early on did not really shine, but as the season progresses, he does grow to shine. And I think that Zordon would have decided once he saw Tommy's potential coming out, I need him. But we also have to bear in mind, Zordon and Tommy have a very close-knit bond. Zordon, I think, is closest to Kimberly and maybe Tommy at this point in the series. Because we've got to bear in mind, in the movie at least, because I'm really married to the movie, I think that Zordon, well, as noted, Kim and telling Zordon, you're like a father to us. And you can see that Tommy is very strongly affected by the potential loss of Zordon. So I think that also plays a factor. So you've got Zordon not exactly playing favorites, but he adores Tommy. And Tommy does show a lot of skills. So,
and if it's not Zordon that would interfere with trying to figure out a way to solve the matter of the green coin,
because the green powers are not very powerful.
It'd be Billy that would try and figure out a way to solve the situation.
Yeah, but we also got to bear in mind that, like I said, I think Jason demonstrated more power with those green ring. That green power. And so, like, I do have to acknowledge that much. Tommy on there, it's a case where the powers were holding Tommy back. Eventually, Tommy began to outpace the powers to an extent, but on the other hand, he didn't. At the time, he couldn't. Eventually, he outpaced them, but on the other hand, early on, he didn't quite. I guess I'm contradicting myself there. Early on, Jason was better with the powers, but then later on, Tommy kind of caught up, but he outpaced them to an extent. It just seemed like an ill-fit green in him. I know that's a controversial statement. I preferred Tommy with white, and he seemed to really be stronger with white and come out into his own. I prefer him in that color. He's also good in red and in black, and I like him in green for the celebration episodes. I do think those are a good idea because it's nostalgic. But early on, I don't know. I don't find green meshed well to an extent because he almost seemed destined to lose those abilities, given the story, and given his own struggles with green and the fact that Zed did have it in for him. So, yeah. As for, let's say, how the series would have progressed, I still think he would have ended up maybe not losing the green powers, but putting them aside for white. And the rest would have been history. I don't think it would have really changed much.
Yeah, and even if you consider taking white out of the picture, when Zeo comes around, he'd still be Zeo Ranger 5, red.
Yeah. We also got to bear in mind that he was spending more time training Billy, and at least it's implied, spent more time with Kimberly, and was really stepping into the leadership role of the Rangers. Like the Bloom of Doom episode shows Tommy kind of trying to resolve this issue between the squabbling girls, and Jason doesn't want to. So you have this kind of leadership role that Tommy interjects himself into. As for the pairings, at least I'm going to try to. I think that's the intention behind that question. I don't know what. Like I don't really remember Turbo, so I can't remember what the pairings were. Did they even have pairings in that season? I don't think they did. In space, I think Ashley and Andros got together, didn't they? Throughout that series, like, and they dated. I do remember that. Lost Galaxy. There didn't seem to be any pairings.
Nothing concrete.
Yeah, you had the Pink Ranger with a crush on Leo. You had Kai with a crush on the Pink Ranger, and you had what seemed to me Leo with a crush on the Blue Ranger. I'm kidding. No. He had a bromance. But as far as the Mighty Morphin pairings, I don't see any reason to like. I think that it probably would have still turned out the way it did.
Yeah,
with the pairings.
I'm not one who dwells on which pairing goes with which character.
Yeah,
I like to psychoanalyze the potential pairings, but overall,
I never gave it much thought.
Yeah, and Power Rangers, that's generally the case.
Yeah.
You don't have to think
sorry
much about it.
Sorry if we're a little boring in that regard, Austin McNeil. Good question. Now that I think about it, I think my favorite pairing was Billy with whatever girlfriend of the week. I'm joking. Actually, in all seriousness, I think of the first season, my favorite pairing was probably Zach and Angela. I actually liked Zach's struggle to impress her and whatnot, and that Zach finally learned to be comfortable with himself. I really, really, really liked that arc for Zach. So if anything, if I had it my way, I'd have Zach still, maybe like 30 years later, he's married to Angela. I don't know. I don't know if that's realistic. I have no idea. I've never really thought about this.
Generally,
I guess maybe I'm leaning towards Kim and Tommy, but that has more to do with the fact that the movie goes with that. And I'm really stuck with the 95 movie as my favorite Power Ranger story and adventure. So I'm like, I think in the context of that to an extent.
When it comes to romance and Power Rangers, it's fairly straightforward.
Yeah, I guess so. But the Power Stealer episode is interesting because there, once again, Zed is going after Tommy and trying to drain him of power. And here, yeah, Tommy really seems to be aware, okay, he's just coming after me and wanting to just suck out the energy and just leave me with nothing. But it does. Now, if we look at later Power Ranger rogues and previous ones, I don't think Rita would have taken her longer to arrive at this plan. I think she would have arrived at this plan. I don't know if she would have thought of it as soon. I don't think the Machine Empire would have at all calculated this plan. They don't seem very bright. You then have after that Diva Talks. I would argue would pick up on this plan around the same time Rita would.
Yes, I'm inclined to agree with that.
Drakina, I might argue slightly faster, but almost around the same time as Rita and Diva Talks. Vipra from Lightspeed Rescue, I think would have been a little faster than even Drakina, because the difference is Drakina is more muscle and a sword wielding maniac, whereas Vipra seems more like she relies on her brains.
There were times in the series where Vipra, sure, she could have observed the battle from
Far.
The evil lair.
Oh, yeah.
But she'd often prefer, I don't want all that extra noise. I'm going to go in the field, on a building, observing the matter.
Yeah.
And I think that...
she's a pretty resourceful villainess.
I think she'd notice quite quickly on this matter.
Yeah, fair enough. Drakina might also do that, but I think it would still take her a little longer.
Yes,
to think up this plan. But she'd also want to go in and sword fight herself. And Drakina versus Green Ranger Tommy would be a great fight.
Oh, yeah.
But not to smack Drakina, but at the start of season 2, Tommy, with his powers failing, versus her, like, mid-season, I might still give it to Tommy as a victory.
Which is very impressive.
Up until his powers start to fail.
Which is rather impressive when it comes to Tommy's skills as a martial artist.
Yeah, but the problem is, in terms of a sword fight, it's not really fair because he's fighting with a butter knife. She's fighting with a sword, so that's not exactly fair. I mean, the fact that he could take down a guy with a butter knife is impressive. Or should we call it a steak knife?
Toothpick?
Yeah. Well, to the dragon sword, it's a toothpick. But yeah, the thing with Zed is he is a clever guy. Honestly, he's probably my second favorite Power Ranger villain of all times. He's the second best.
Ivan Ooze might pick up on it, but he wouldn't care. He'd just go to the sword.
Blast.
Exactly.
It's like, I don't care. But even then, I kind of think in some ways Zed is smarter than Ivan.
Yes.
Sometimes having all the power in the universe, you tend to take this for granted.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And yeah, the Beetle invasion episodes has Zed once again trying to steal the Green Ranger powers. Really what he's trying to do is drain the energy. And this is where Zed is also using the strategy of just throwing day after day, because in some of these episodes, the fight takes place not even like 12 hours later, it seems. Well, actually, it takes place like 12 hours later because it's pretty much overnight. But it seems like he's just sending wave after wave of monster to exhaust the spirits of the various Rangers, while also draining the power of the Green Ranger, and occasionally trying to use whatever strategy he can to turn Ranger against Ranger. So Zed's a guy who he's slowly chipping away at the stone walls while also taking advantage of the actual weakness. So he's trying to create a weakness while also exploiting a pre-existing weakness. So here, he really thinks like a military strategist in general.
And as we mentioned in both the Zach and Trini live streams, those two are starting to go through burnout because of that.
Yeah, and Jason's getting whipped up into a frenzy of rage to an extent, and isn't really. He's not really able to focus like he used to, and because if you look at the Green with Evil arc, Jason was a lot more cool and level-headed than he is at this point. Although the trouble is, Jason is also dealing with the frustration of seeing his best friend clearly start to break down a little and fall into a depression over the loss of his powers. So what you have is this, like, Jason's getting depressed and angry over Tommy. Kimberly is obviously heartbroken because her man is feeling really broken down. And you have Zach and Trini just exhausted. And yet, weirdly, the only one who seems to be a rock for the team is Billy. Billy's the man. And Billy is really the one who is trying to intellectually figure this out, but who's not weakening, but strengthening and growing stronger throughout this entire situation. So you have Green No More. In that episode, Tommy sees a vision of himself from the future with that warns him that he's going to lose his abilities. We have such a time paradox. I'm not even going to try to figure it out this time because I think in the review we try and my brain's just going, what? And yeah. Now, I forget which episode it was, but I think it was one of the previous season episodes where Tommy had struggled over asking Kim out to a dance. I forget which episode. I know it's a very major plot point, and that Tommy in the end does, and Kim ends up kind of very pleased with that, and ends up kind of teasing Tommy. It was funny just seeing her go to an extent. I love that. She's like a little pixie. And you've got, in turn, really, I'd argue the only one kind of trying to keep Tommy together is Kim. And okay, I didn't have the episodes on hand, and I forgot. I was supposed to be the one to put that in the notes, but
The green candle.
Yeah, Green Candle was when he was asking Kim out. Thank you, Rob Kiersey. So yeah, that's also a major plot point. I didn't write that down in the notes when I should have. That's on me, not Dan. Dan covered most of the notes. I was supposed to cover other details. Hey, I got our notes right for the Baylet stream, so that's upcoming. So good on me. Yep, I just failed here. But anyways, and I do say I fail here because obviously. So I do apologize to you guys. Anyways, yeah, the green candle is when Tommy struggled to ask Kim out. And I will point out that is when Zach struggled to ask Angela out and then face planted while trying to do it. And
That was always amusing.
I love that scene. I love that scene. It's so hilarious. Anyways, and welcome, Rob Kiersey. And anyways, we've got a few comments from Austin McNeil, I just noticed. I'll just get through commenting on the Kim thing. I know that by the oyster episode, Tommy and Kim went together as a couple, and Tommy had to, they end up just having Tommy and Kim try to hint at Zach, don't try to buy her affection, and Zach kind of screws that up. So they're also mentors to Zach in a way. Oh, and we have been watching some Dino Thunder. Oh, great viewing. I love Dino Thunder. Lately, it was cool. They brought him back. Yeah, Dino Thunder was awesome. Yeah, might actually be probably up there in like the top 3 greatest seasons of all times.
Yeah.
That season's just darn near perfect. And then we have the pairing stuff, Jason Kim. I still can't imagine that. It seems kind of incestuous to me. Zach and Angela, of course. Billy and maybe a new girl. That's cool. Yeah, I don't blame. Okay, Austin McNeil, you're pointing out something very, very good about when it comes to Billy. Like, it is so bizarre how he went from the guy, like, I don't know about asking girls out, to basically going through a different girl on his arm every episode.
It's like, yeah, the harem.
Yeah, it's like he's more of a well, he tends to see girls around. He gets with girls more often than Barney Stinson. For anyone who recognizes How I Met Your Mother, kudos to you. But yeah, like Billy just becomes such a weird kind of. Anyways, now that I think about it, maybe Billy and Kat would have worked better.
Because
I don't know, like.
I know early on when I first watched it, I imagined Billy and Trini,
But then there was our Richie guy who showed up.
exactly.
Yeah, okay. Rocky and Aisha, yeah, I too thought that. Adam and Tanya, yeah. Tanya and Kat. I still have a hard time imagining that one. I know I saw it on screen, but it's just never sticks in my brain. TJ and Cassie. Oh yeah, I can't. TJ and Cassie are two of my favorite characters, but it's been so long since I saw Turbo. But when I rewatched the Psycho Ranger episodes, which I love to just rewatch over and over again, those two really come off as having a pretty good relationship. Ashley and Andros, okay. Okay. Zane and Corona, okay. Leon Kendrick. Leon Kendrick, I don't really see. It's just, it seems more like a crush to me. Kaya and a girl named Sarah. Maya. Okay, who's Sarah? Probably a female character I don't recognize. What do we think? Honestly, you're probably naming a few Power Ranger characters I don't. Like, I'm so rusty that I don't remember from Lost Galaxy. It's probably been, I think, 2 years since I saw that season. I typically rewatch Mighty Morphin more often. And lately I've rewatched Lightspeed Rescue. And yeah, Dan likes to have us rewatch that. But also, I think last year I rewatched Dino Thunder, but I don't remember Lost Galaxy too well right now. I'm one of those people, I have to read it or see it in order to really remember it for the most part. I can remember some movies scene for scene, but other times I need to rewatch it. Otherwise, it doesn't stick in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, you already said that. The villain had a nice design too. Mesogog, I think was the name. Oh, I love Mesogog. He's a great villain. He had a great design.
Yes.
I do remember that from Dino Thunder.
And the evil he emanated was...
Well, he threatened to eat people. He was psycho. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, like he was creepy. Honestly, anytime a villain's like, I'm going to eat you, I always go, ew.
But Mesogog thing, that...
Yeah, and the fact that he actually said it with a certain amount of
pleasure.
Yeah, was frightening. I love that the actors for the various villains in Dino Thunder season did a great job as well of showing their reaction is basically one to just kind of flinch away and just go, ew. And just how perverse he was. But, oh man, Mesogog is at least one of the top 10 or top 5 best villains. Like I said, he's just such a great villain. And if not, he's in like the top 6 or 7. He's such a great villain. So very good choice, Rob Kiersey. Great season. Dino Thunder is one of the best. But yeah, as to this is Green No More. Yeah, Tommy ends up triumphing over, of course, Goldar, and at this point, we were also discussing the pairing of Tommy and Kim. Tommy, throughout season 1, seems to play more the love interest role. Like he's more a supporting character as Green Ranger for Kim, not to remove from any accomplishments he did pull off. I mean, he's the first to defeat Goldar. That's impressive. Goldar was a great villain. Like he is a great fighter. And you look at how many times he's handled the Rangers early on. There's a reason why in a lot of video games he is a major boss. And yet, Tommy defeats him without the powers as a normal human being. And I just love that Zed ends up positioning himself so that you can't get to Zed unless you're a normal human. But who would have the courage and skill to get to him? Well, of course, Tommy, who's lost his abilities, has the skill and cunning to do so. And I love how I think Zed just collapses in Goldar's arms like, oh, no, I can't believe but how could this happen to me? And that you have Zed. I think Zed realized what happened exactly. And he's like, oh, God, how did I outsmart myself here? But, well, no, he doesn't collapse into Goldar's arms. But like he's like, oh, God, how did this happen to me? Oh, TJ was underrated. Yes, I love TJ. He's probably tied in first place as my favorite Red Ranger. Rocky's my other favorite. So
I would have liked to see more of him.
I wanted him. I wish he got his own Dino Thunder season.
Yeah.
Like I wanted TJ to get another season. Like just about him or something. Like he definitely should have gotten a whole season to himself. Like I know they had their plans for that Green Ranger or Rise of the Emerald Dragon, which was a great idea. I love that idea. I always hoped that they would do that and then follow it up with maybe one season for maybe Cassie because she needed one. One for maybe Mike or Leo, and one for TJ, and maybe one for other certain Rangers like maybe not Adam actually. I don't know if Johnny Young Bosch would have been okay with that, but maybe one for I don't know. But the fact is, TJ did basically come up with a lot of the plans to defeat the Psycho Rangers. Yeah. I like to think that it was primarily Tommy who mentored TJ in strategy and planning because the lady who replaced Zordon was just, I don't remember much of her, but I remember her being flabbergastingly dumb. And TJ was very clearly mentored by Tommy. And if you look at Forever Red, the two really enjoy working together. And there's a great bromance between Tommy and TJ. And I wish that TJ showed up for like 2-3 episodes in Dino Thunder.
Would have been interesting.
Because he was basically the original Padawan learner to Tommy. Because the next great student that Tommy takes on is, I would argue, really Kira, that is one of Tommy's great apprentices. But TJ was the original great Padawan.
And TJ could have come in and helped out when Tommy was dealing with
the invisibility curse. Yeah. I would have had Connor and Kira get together. Well, I don't think they had any. Wait, they're a possible pairing? Okay, I never thought about that. Wasn't she with Trent?
Thought so.
I thought, didn't Kira have initially nothing but disdain for Connor and Ethan? Yeah, she did. And then later they were basically like her idiots, I think was how she might have worded it. Actually, maybe Haley and Tommy could have worked. Now that I think about it. Like the one lady he was cooperating with. But she could have also worked with Billy, I guess. I'm trying to think of in this pairing mindset. I'm not very good at it. Well, evidently, I'm not very good at it. But honestly, when it comes to Connor and Ethan, what I liked about those two is just I never remembered any romantic plots with them. I just remember the great bromance between the two. I really loved the bromance that the two had. I really like the interactions between the two actors. They did a good job. And I find while they start off antagonistic with each other, I really like how they became best friends. Like, they're two Rangers. I'm like, oh, yeah, in 10 years, are they still going to be hanging out and going for drinks and whatnot? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, sure, I found them insufferable
At the start.
but the slow progression
In friendship was...
It really brought out something very fascinating.
Yeah. Ethan made Connor smarter, and Connor made Ethan bolder in a way. And the weird thing is, I can't really imagine the two hanging out with Kira too much after the season. But I see her becoming a dedicated Power Ranger. I see those two I just see those two basically going like on a road trip together or something. Like they kind of reminded me of Ollie Queen and Hal Jordan, just being willing to go off into the sunset together and bromance their way across America.
Yeah.
Like they're probably one of my favorite romances in Power Ranger history. So, yeah. But yeah, like, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the Connor Kira thing. I wonder if that's a common trope or a pairing night in Power Ranger fan base.
I think it is.
Really? Okay. Sorry for my naivete. I don't really pay attention to that because, especially in the past week, because. Anyways, let's see. So yeah, I think we're at the missing green. I'm not gonna crack my Louis Armstrong joke. And red roses too. But here, this is really about Jason, who feels responsible for Tommy's loss of power. And you've got Jason, who's here. We see really the insecurity and the weakness and the sheer sorrow Jason feels for the loss of Tommy's abilities. And this is a plot point I really, really wanted Jason to confront later on. Because Tommy had to confront this sort of plot point in, I think, Dino Thunder with the episode where he's asleep and in a coma and he's confronted by his various powers. So if Tommy had to confront it, why couldn't Jason, to an extent, come back to this plot? And Tommy also had to confront it in Trent. So you have, and so you do have this, this brought up again and again, but, you know, like, I don't know if the Jason season that recently happened used this plot point. I hope they did. And gave Jason closure, because if that's the case, I would watch that season. I'd probably watch it because
one thing is that Missing Green is a culmination of the effects of the Green Ranger.
Hey, you know, there's something we didn't talk about last time with the Jason stream. I just had a thought. We talked about how Trini and Zach have been feeling burnt out over the course of the first season because Zed's been overwhelming everyone with his constant barrage of monsters at everyone. Maybe in this episode, we kind of see that Jason's starting to burn out and that the anger is almost bluster. Like he's got to force himself. He's got to be angry because if not, he's exhausted from the constant monster raids. And that maybe the loss of Tommy at his elbow is like a huge punch in the gut.
And with the elements of the green candle,
yeah,
that overwhelmed him to the point that, oh, we just lost Tommy's abilities. It's my fault. And being the essentially the leader at this point, he blames himself.
Yeah.
So
I really love how you've just got like the Jason Tommy bromance is a great one in this past season, and it does not get the praise it deserves to a large extent. But let's see. It seemed like the actress who played Kira had the most fun. Oh, really? That's good. I really got a kick out of the episodes where the monster was turning people old. Oh, I remember that one as well. And the team's personalities got changed. Oh, dear Lord. That episode. Yeah, that episode was funny. I got a kick out of that one. My favorites were evidently the Tommy episodes. I just remember the how dark they got. I also like the one where Kira's musician friend comes into town. I like that one. And honestly, that one, like, but then again, all the Kira episodes were really good. The Kira actress was very talented. And she's probably one of the highlights of Dino Thunder because Kira's such a dynamic character. And in a way, she's got a lot of traits from Kim, like the skilled musician thing. You've got the natural leadership qualities that Kim had, the natural abilities in martial arts and whatnot. But Kira also reminded me kind of Tanya and even Jason to an extent in a positive way. And also Aisha. Like, she reminded me of all of those characters. Also, in the episode where the monster was turning people old, was Cassidy just accepted she was elderly. Oh, yeah. Then again, I think Cassidy's the reporter girl who was supposed to be one of the Balkan Skulls of this episode of this season. But I always wanted Cassidy, or like the reporter girl, to become a ranger in that season. I just thought she would have been an interesting range addition to the team. But they went with a different show, and they actually gave a really interesting plot point, Fred, nonetheless. So maybe they knew better than I did. But yeah, we have Missing Green. But I would argue there is one other episode to discuss before we close up the stream. The start of Cassidy was the reporter lady. Yeah, okay, thank you. It's just names are not another thing I'm not very good at. I have that early season 1 Tommy memory problem. Okay, yeah. She was a great character. I liked her. It's an interesting thing that a lot of the side characters in Dino Thunder really stand out. That was a season with a great cast.
Yeah.
Just such a great cast. I'd argue not since Lightspeed Rescue was there such a solid cast for a Power Ranger season by the time of Dino Thunder. But White Light, I'm only going to argue the case for that being the last Green Ranger Tommy appearance, because let's bear in mind he's at the beach. Of course, he's by the sea. He's always by the sea when he's depressed or on his own. I'm joking. Later, it's the original 3 who are by the sea a lot. I guess the sea just, Cthulhu just comes out and goes chomp, drags him into the sea, and that's it for them. I'm joking, and they disappear off screen. I'm joking. But Tommy is teleported off to the command center where he's turned into the White Ranger. But it's also interesting how each of the Rangers start complaining. Primarily, Kim, Zach, and Trini really become bitter and start questioning Zordon's leadership because they have the attitude, why couldn't he give these powers to Tommy? I mean, Tommy's already one of us. So it does show their attachment to Tommy. And the thing is, they seem more upset about that, and I think they're like, why couldn't he just get these powers earlier? I think that Zordon and Alpha were looking for those abilities when the green powers first started to falter, and that it was just a matter of putting everything together, fine-tuning the abilities in the power coin, and starting to set aside power and whatnot.
Not to mention Zed's constant attacks didn't help. Where they had focused a lot of attention on fighting the monsters. So there wasn't as much time that Zordon and Alpha could put aside.
Yeah. Oh, Austin McNeil. Did you know that they were going to reveal that Haley was a lesbian, but they dropped it? Oh, I didn't know that. But it would kind of make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So she'd be, I think, the second lesbian character in Power Ranger history.
Kelsey from Lightspeed Rescue
was pretty much the first lesbian. Yeah.
With that astronaut.
Yeah. But of course, the crowning moment for Tommy is when he descends from the heavens, seemingly from the stars, and accepts Saba and is crowned the leader of the Power Rangers. What I like there is also the relieved smile of Jason. Like, okay, thank God I don't have this job anymore. It's an interesting thing that while I know a lot of fans were upset, in universe, the ceding of the mantle of leadership is not one that Jason revolted against or rebelled against or complained about. He accepted it with a smile, with dignity and grace, which does him a lot of credit. And I think in universe he was relieved, but he was also of the mindset, if Zach's burnt out as he is and is mentally tuned out of this gig, Tommy should be the heir. I think Jason would have preferred Tommy as well, because this is someone he could trust in unconditionally, and Tommy is his bro. So, yeah. Zed was the best villain. Another one that almost defeated him was Master Vile. Master Vile was which season again? I think that's let's see. Was the father of Rita, also on Rito Revolto. Isn't he with the Machine Empire? Let's see. Well, I think my issue to an extent with Master Vile, I do have a slight problem with him, and it was just that I didn't like the idea of him being more powerful than Zed. And he did seem to kind of overshadow Zed. But on the other hand, but he isn't a terrible villain. They just don't really use him, it seems. And I didn't really notice Master Vile, if I'm being quite honest. He didn't impress me all that much. But if you really like him, well, that's good.
And if he was more powerful, wouldn't have been something that an extended arc, where in the end, Zed pretty much stabbed him in the back to take his power.
But one thing I did like about Master Vile was that we finally get to see what Rita's dad is like. So that is a positive. But
I also miss Rito Revolto.
I liked him. He couldn't pronounce the letter Z. Ed. That was a funny trait. I didn't like season 3 of Power Rangers. Oh gosh, it was so bad.
Oh boy.
But just that, Ed! It's Zed, you bumbling buffoon. Sure thing, Ed. Isn't that what I said? It's like, oh God. So I loved Rito. He was a great character. He was a good antithesis in a way to Goldar. On the other hand, I wish they had kept Zed serious rather than what we got in season 3.
Yeah, that was painful.
In hindsight, actually, can you imagine if we had gotten a Master Vile and Zed, serious Zed from season 2 team up?
Oh boy, that would have really raised the scales.
Yeah, the stakes would have been raised really high there. That would have been great. So thanks for bringing him up, Kiersey. So yeah, yeah, I guess I will admit, yeah, some of the multi-part episodes were good, but I just found that, for example, they just had when they had Zed throw himself on the ground and throw a temper tantrum, that killed season 3 for me.
Yeah, even if it wasn't one of the first few episodes of season 3, that turned me off to season 3.
And then there's Ninjor.
I much prefer Dulcia.
Yeah,
far more attractive.
Yeah, that would have probably been better. Austin McNeil, that probably would have been better with the Ranger team storming the palace to take out. Well, for one thing, I'd still want Zed to survive.
But letting the Power Rangers have a big victory over Zed?
Yeah, but I would want Zed to maybe be wounded and maybe forced to retreat. But maybe they do slay Rita. And what this plants the seeds for is maybe Zed to come back in a few years for revenge for the death of his wife. And that sets a multi-season kind of arc. And maybe, I don't know, if Rise of the Emerald Dragon, you could have Tommy and him have to duke it out one last time. And this time, Tommy's doesn't have his friends to back him up. That would have been probably neat.
On the bright side, he wouldn't have to worry about the Green Ranger abilities switching on and off.
No, because, well, yeah, because he solved that problem somehow off screen with the Master Morpher, I think. I think it was a reference somewhere that the Master Morpher solved that problem. So, well, he solved it a bit before that, I think in Dino Thunder with the balancing episode between all the powers, but the Master Morpher only further cemented the balance. So, yeah, I love the Master Morpher idea. It brings a lot of logic and it really streamlines a lot for Tommy and whatnot. And the metallic armor really sucks because I would have actually had armor, not stupid glitters. Well, yeah, I guess. My main thing was just my other thing I think I didn't like about season 3, now that I think about it, is how Bulk and Skull became friendly with the Rangers in season 2, but now they're no longer friendly in season 3. And they have to redo that entire arc. And I was like, we already did this arc. Why are we doing it over? Yeah, sorry. If you actually like the interactions in season 3, they weren't for us because we were like, we already did this. Next, move on. Forward, please. Not backwards. And season 3, I kind of felt like it was envious of season 2. It wanted to be season 2, but it wasn't season 2.
I mean, it was
I would argue Power Rangers Zeo was probably a better season 3 to an extent.
Yeah, and it says many felt that the plastic armor from the movies, many people felt they should have reused those, so that way they had more control over the action scenes, so that they would have more control over the storytelling.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't be relegated to using the stock footage from Super Sentai.
Yeah, the stock footage really did them more harm than good. And yeah,
it's like early on using the stock footage, fine. But eventually, Power Rangers was making so much money, they could have used their own scenes and choreography and whatnot, and they wouldn't lose out on money.
Yeah, probably. They'd probably lose out a little, but yeah. But yeah, that's all we've really got to say about. Oh, the only stock footage in season 3 was the Zord battles. Ah, okay.
Okay.
Well, they should have probably still gone with the armor.
But then again, that's probably because of the White Ranger, because the White Ranger is from a different season in time.
No. Like what I'm referring to is like the armor of the movie and bringing it into season 3. Season 3 had, which I did like the toys during that season. Yeah, I remember loving the toys as well.
Yeah, toys were always a joy.
But when it comes to the toys, I barely remember them anymore because I think I broke most of them when I was a little kid, and I still like if people show them on screen, I go, "Oh yeah, I remember that."
I remember one of our cousins had the dragon dagger.
Oh yeah. He did. He showed it off, and we were envious. But
oh yeah.
But in hindsight, like if you were to ask me, like, would I collect the toys today? No, I might collect the helmets, but not the toys. I'm not a toy guy. Ironically, I'm more of I like models. I've not yet learned how to make them, but I'd love to. But toys, I know people collect them. I don't really fully get it. But if you were to show me, like, if you were to collect the weapons of the Rangers or the helmets, I get that. But yeah, back as a kid, yeah, I totally would have collected all the toys if I could, but I couldn't. We were pretty broke.
Yeah.
But yeah, season 3, like I said, was not a great season in my opinion. It also downgraded Kim a little as a fighter. She went from holding her own and being one of the best fighters to being constantly needing saving and protecting, and that was annoying.
Yeah.
She went from the main character to just an irritant. The white Shogun sword was pink. So Tommy was the Pink Ranger at one point.
Oh boy.
So he was pink. So he did actually do almost all the colors. All he was missing was yellow and blue. And he would have collected them all.
Pokemon.
Yeah.
Oh wait, wrong franchise.
Yeah. But yeah, Tommy did kind of grow up with the Green Ranger abilities, and a lot of people did grow up with him as a Green Ranger. What I mean is, we see him enter the series as a lost young boy, and when he leaves, and as far as the Green Ranger abilities go, he leaves as a young man, shaken, and yes, overshadowed by some of the tragedies and struggles he's faced off against, but he's managed to champion himself and his cause really well and really grandly. And I don't think anyone else in universe could have done as good a job as him with the Green Ranger abilities or shown himself as great. And yeah, so next time we're going to be dealing with, I think, Bulk and Skull, which is going to be a bit funny because they're pretty unique characters. They get really good character development in the first two seasons because, like they go from bullies to being friends of the Rangers. So that at the beginning of the movie, they're included in that roster of very, very close personal friends on the plane. And the Rangers, when on the ground, actually worry about them a little. But I'd argue my favorite relationship of Bulk and Skull is probably with Aisha, just because of how she worries about them and how that episode where they bring that hypnotist, or not that hypnotist, that psychic, and she's so horrified. Like, I can't believe my babies have become these morons. And then you have Rocky, like, I gotta see this. I just love the contrast of her being horrified and Rocky just being sadistic. Oh man, I love the Stone Canyon show. But anyways, don't forget to smash that like and subscribe for more of our content. Hopefully we'll have another review out for you guys soon. We're gonna have to probably boot chuck it to get the next one out, but between this and the other channel, we'll need to do a lot of catch up. So yeah, stay tuned for more, and do take care, everyone.